2 teenage girls, first-class tickets, a flight they never boarded. Kalea and Seren Ward were just 17 bright, composed, and headed to a national youth leadership conference. Everything about their trip was ordinary until it wasn't. Why were they suddenly pulled off the plane just minutes before takeoff? Why did airline staff claim they made people uncomfortable when all they did was sit in their assigned seats? And what happens when the father they call for help isn't just a parent, but the CEO of a powerful tech company who refuses to let his daughters be quietly erased? This isn't just about a flight. It's about race. It's about power. And it's about what happens when a soft-spoken act of discrimination meets the fierce love of a father and a truth too powerful to ignore. They followed every rule, and still, they were stopped. But what they did next, that shook an entire industry. Would you have stayed silent, or would you have made the world listen? Like, share, and subscribe. Because what you're about to hear is more than a story. It's a mirror. Now, let's begin. I never thought a terminal could feel like a stage. Not until that morning. The tile floors of Summit Bay International reflected the pale glow of sunrise, casting long strips of light across our sneakers as we wheeled our carry-ons toward the Skyreach Airlines check-in counter. Around us, the usual rhythm of an early airport pulsed espresso machines hissing, flight numbers humming over loudspeakers, families huddled in clusters, already weary. Beside me, my twin sister Seren tugged at the sleeve of her oversized hoodie, nudging me with her elbow. No security team, no bodyguards, just us. Feels good. Right. I gave her a half smile. Good or reckless? I haven't decided. We were both 17 black, confident, a little too curious for our own good. For the first time, we were flying completely alone. Our destination, the National Teen Innovation Forum in Crestline, California, a week-long event filled with panels, workshops, and keynote speakers from all over the country. Out of thousands of applicants, we'd been chosen. Serene for her environmental robotics project, me for a community tech initiative I'd built at school. It was supposed to be exciting, but beneath the surface, something in me buzzed quietly. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe it was habit. Seren wore her confidence like a favorite hoodie loose, effortless, unbothered. I carried mine differently, tucked deep in my ribs, surrounded by 1,000 backup plans and the need to never give anyone a reason to doubt us. "You've got the boarding passes?" I asked. She tapped her phone. Digital and printed. Dad would have triple-checked if he were here. Dad, Julian Ward, founder and CEO of Ardent Link Technologies, the kind of man who made business headlines without trying to. To most, he was a tech magnate. To us, he was the dad who insisted we learned CPR before algebra, who made us write our own travel checklists, who drilled us on rights, procedures, and proof. Before we left the house, he said one thing. "You don't just represent me, you represent you. So don't let the world forget who you are." I'd nodded, but part of me had laughed inside. What could possibly go wrong? We had first-class tickets, confirmation emails, matching ID cards, even a conference letter of attendance. We were over-prepared. At the Skyreach kiosk, the check-in agent was a young woman with a tight bun and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She scanned our passes, then paused. "You two are—" "In first class," she asked, brows lifting. Seren didn't miss a beat. "Yes, ma'am." "Seats 1A and 1B. The agent hesitated just for a breath, then printed our bag tags. "Enjoy your flight," she said, but her voice had cooled a degree. As we walked away, Seren leaned toward me. "Did you feel that the micro-freeze?" Yeah, maybe she was just surprised. Or maybe she thought two black girls couldn't afford those seats. I wanted to say she was overthinking it. I really did. But I knew better. At gate 24B, we found two open chairs near the window and collapsed into them, balancing our smoothies and books like seasoned travelers. Outside, the tarmac shimmered with motion. Planes crawled across concrete, wings glittering in the sun. Pilots walked with purpose. Flight crews laughed softly over coffee. "This is going to be a good week," Seren said, unwrapping her protein bar. "I hope the world is ready for us." She grinned. "It better be." We looked the same, always had. Brown skin, natural curls pulled back in twin buns, simple black leggings, and gray sweatshirts with our school emblem stitched near the hem. But Serene was fire and breeze. I was glass and iron. She spoke first. I measured the room. Together, we worked. And this trip, it wasn't just about a forum, it was a test. A first flight toward the lives we were building. "You nervous?" she asked, suddenly quieter. I shrugged. Not about the plane. Then what the rooms we're about to enter. The stages. The people who already decided who we are. She nodded slowly. "We'll walk in anyway." I smiled. "Yeah, we always do." When boarding was called, we didn't rush. That was another lesson from Dad. Don't be the first to board unless you're the pilot or the one refueling the jet. We waited until the elderly and families with toddlers were through, then joined the slow shuffle toward the gate. The agent barely looked up as she scanned our passes. Ward, 1A and 1B, all set. We walked down the jet bridge side by side, the hum of the aircraft waiting for us at the end. "I always forget how cold it gets in here," Seren muttered, rubbing her arms. "Told you to wear the hoodie and the jacket." "Style over survival," she teased, but her smile faded as we stepped into the plane. Not from the temperature, from the look. A tall flight attendant stood at the door. Lacey Dunn, blonde bun, sharp eyes, smile like frozen butter. "Good morning," she said. Her gaze flicked from me to Serene, then back. "Flying alone today," Serene answered. "Yes, ma'am." "Heading to a student summit in Crestline. First class, yes. 1A and 1B. Lacey paused just long enough to register, then stepped aside. "Welcome aboard." Her tone said it. Her eyes didn't. We moved down the aisle, stowed our bags, and settled into our seats. The leather cushions felt too smooth. The space too quiet. "Do you feel it?" I asked. Seren nodded. "Slow. It's not turbulence." We buckled in. The cabin door was still open. The rest of the world hadn't noticed us yet. But we'd already been measured. And someone, somewhere, was getting ready to question what they'd just seen. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like waiting for something you don't want to admit is coming. That's what it was like sitting in 1A and 1B that morning. Our seats were at the very front of the aircraft. First class on Skyreach Airlines was a soft leather affair, warm wood trays, noise-canceling headsets, and a little welcome card slid between the water bottle and the pillow, the kind of space designed to say, "You've made it." But no matter how much we tried to relax into it, something about the air felt off. Flight attendants moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency, but not one made eye contact with us again. Not since the door. Seren unzipped her backpack and pulled out her reading journal, flipping to a dog-eared page she'd been working on. Her fingers trembled slightly, and I knew it wasn't from the chill. "Do you think they're going to say something?" I glanced around. A man in a business suit 2 rows back had his AirPods in, already lost in a podcast. Across the aisle, a woman dabbed foundation onto her jaw using her phone camera. No one else seemed to notice us, or maybe they had and chose to look away. I don't know, I whispered, but I think they already have. That's when we saw her again. Lacey Dunn, the tall blonde flight attendant from the front door, was now whispering with another crew member, a tall man with dark hair, neatly trimmed beard, walkie-talkie clipped to his belt. His name tag read Matthew Rowan. They were standing near the galley, whispering, glancing, whispering again. Then they looked toward us, and when I met Lacey's gaze, she quickly looked away. Seren leaned closer, her voice low, steady. That's the second time. Maybe third. I saw it. You think this is about our age? It's not about our age. She nodded slowly, her fingers gripping the armrest. Right. I just needed to hear you say it. 5 minutes later, Lacey approached us. Her smile was there again, stretched, brittle, professional. She held a silver tray with a few glasses of pre-departure drinks. Ladies, she said, can I offer you some orange juice or cranberry water before takeoff? Orange juice, please. We both said together, like it was a reflex. She handed us the glasses, but didn't move, just hovered. Tray balanced perfectly, her tone suddenly casual. If I may, I'd like to verify something with the purser before departure. A quick check of the manifest. I'll be right back. I blinked. Is there a problem? Oh, no, nothing at all, she said too quickly. Just unusual. Unusual. She didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. She turned and walked off, her heels clicking sharply against the cabin floor. Seren stared after her. Okay, she whispered. That was not normal. You're not imagining it. They think we don't belong up here. I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't agree, but because I could already feel what was coming next. Outside the window, the ramp crew was finishing up. A catering cart pulled away from the side of the aircraft. The pilot, a middle-aged man in navy blue, waved to someone on the ground. The world outside was moving like clockwork, but inside, something had stalled. I took a sip of the orange juice and set it down, untouched. My stomach had tightened, not with fear, but with the weight of something I hadn't wanted to carry this morning, the quiet, familiar knowledge that access doesn't always equal acceptance. A few minutes later, we heard the soft hiss of the cabin door closing. I thought, maybe we're clear. Maybe this is all just noise. But then footsteps approached. 2 pairs. Lacey returned this time with Matthew beside her. His face was unreadable. Not angry, not concerned. Just neutral. And in a way, that made it worse. He carried a small clipboard and paused by our row. Excuse me, ladies, he said politely. I'll need to see your boarding passes once again. Seren blinked. We already scanned them at the gate, Lacey cut in. That same customer service smile pasted across her lips. Yes, of course. It's just that a minor procedural inconsistency came up. We'd like to verify the details back at the gate. I sat up straighter. Inconsistency? Matthew's voice dropped half a note. If you wouldn't mind stepping off the aircraft with us, it won't take long. Behind us, I could feel it. The gaze of other passengers. Not all, but enough. The woman with the makeup brush had paused mid-dab. The man in the suit had lowered his phone. Seren turned to me, jaw clenched. I nodded. Fine. We unbuckled, gathered our carry-ons, and followed them down the aisle. The aisle we'd walked with quiet confidence not 10 minutes ago. This time, it felt longer, like we weren't passengers anymore. Just a problem that needed removing. The walk back up the jet bridge felt different the second time. Colder, quieter, The hum of the aircraft behind us faded as we stepped into the gate area once more. The sound replaced by the rustle of boarding passes, the low chatter of waiting passengers, and the not-so-subtle stares aimed in our direction. I kept my head up, not out of pride, but because I knew how many people wanted to see us fold. Matthew Rowan walked ahead, clipboard tucked close to his chest like it contained state secrets. Lacey Dunn followed behind us like a silent shadow, her expression unreadable, her smile long gone. At the podium, a woman in a navy blazer stood waiting, her posture stiff, her eyes tired like she'd already rehearsed this moment more than once. Her name tag read, Ms. Halbrook, Kalea and Seren Ward. She asked, though our names were clearly printed on the manifest in her hands. Yes, I said evenly. We just need to do a quick verification of your travel details. May I see your IDs and any documentation related to your trip? We handed over our passports and the printed invitation letter from the National Teen Innovation Forum. She flipped through the pages slowly, too slowly, like she was hoping something would be out of place. You're traveling without adult supervision? Yes, I said. But we're 17. We don't fall under unaccompanied minor policies. We've traveled before. Seren added, plenty of times. Ms. Halbrook glanced at Matthew. They exchanged a brief, tight-lipped look. The flight crew expressed concerns. There it was again. That word, concerns. What kind of concerns? Seren asked, her voice sharp but measured. The woman hesitated. A flicker of discomfort passed across her face. They were uncertain about the legitimacy of the booking. My breath caught. Legitimacy. Are you implying our tickets were fake? No one's implying anything, she said too quickly. We're simply being thorough. Seren let out a short, humorless laugh. If we were two white girls with coach bags and charm necklaces, would you be this thorough? Matthew shifted uncomfortably beside her. Ms. Halbrook's smile twitched more reflex than emotion. This has nothing to do with appearance. I looked her in the eye. It never does. Until it does. We were asked politely to wait, to sit in the row of hard plastic chairs near the podium while they escalated to a supervisor. So we sat, and we waited, and we were watched. Not just by gate agents, but by travelers walking past with rolling bags and phone chargers. Some gave curious glances. Others averted their eyes entirely, like proximity might infect them with inconvenience. Seren crossed her arms tightly over her chest, her foot tapping a silent rhythm against the tile. I knew it, she said under her breath. They were never going to let us fly. Don't say that, I whispered. It might still be a misunderstanding. She snapped. Kalea. We had first-class tickets, valid IDs, a conference letter, and they still pulled us off the plane like stowaways. I didn't answer because I didn't want to lie, and I didn't have the truth. A few seats down, a guy in his early 20s sat cross-legged on the floor with a camera rig and a mic clipped to his collar. I'd noticed him on the flight earlier, maybe a travel vlogger. He whispered something into the mic, then glanced toward us. His lens was pointed our way. Are we being filmed? Seren asked. I nodded slowly. I think we already are. That was when I felt it. The shift. The thing that had been building quietly since we stepped onto that jet bridge the first time. It wasn't about protocol anymore. It wasn't about age. It wasn't even about airline policy. It was about perception. About who is believed to belong in a first-class seat and who still has to explain themselves to sit there. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Still no explanation. Still no flight. Seren paced near the window. Her arms were crossed, but I could see her knuckles tightening as she clenched the boarding pass in her hand. I remained seated, staring down at my phone. No texts, no updates, just the slow burn of something I couldn't name. Humiliation, rage. Maybe both. Why is it always like this? Seren asked suddenly. Why do we have to act like it's not happening while it's happening? Because if we react too loudly, we become the threat, I said quietly. And if we don't react, they keep doing it. She stopped pacing, looked at me. Her eyes burned. Then what do? I swallowed hard. We call Dad. Seren stood frozen, phone in hand, thumb hovering over the green dial button like it was a trigger. Are we sure? She asked, voice quieter now, vulnerable. Yes, I said, because all of this had already gone too far. She tapped Dad's name. The screen lit up. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then his voice calm, clipped, steady as ever. Kalea. Yeah. I breathed. Something in my tone cracked. I knew it. And more importantly, so did he. Where are you? Are you both safe? We're at the gate. They pulled us off the plane. Silence. Then that kind of exhale I'd only heard from him a few times in my life. Low, heavy, tightly coiled beneath years of practiced restraint. Seren leaned in. They said we made the flight crew uncomfortable, that it's unusual for 2 minors to sit in first class without a guardian. Another pause. Did you have all your paperwork? Yes, I said. ID, boarding passes, the conference letter, everything matched. And they still removed you. They said we could wait for another flight, or sit in coach if we had an adult next to us. I heard rustling on the other end, drawers opening, papers moving. Then his voice again, colder now. Stay put. Don't approach the desk. Don't speak to anyone else. I'll handle it. Dad, Seren said carefully, please don't make this a thing. It's already a thing, he said flatly. Then he hung up. We stared at the phone for a long moment. The boarding area around us churned on. Business as usual. Kids played games on iPads. Someone sipped from a steaming cup of chai. A gate agent smiled at a frequent flyer as if nothing seismic was about to happen. But for us, the ground had already started to shift. Seren sat beside me again, her body tight with the kind of tension that came from knowing you were right, but still being treated like a problem. Now what she whispered, now we wait. 10 minutes passed, then 15, and then my phone buzzed. A notification, a live stream. Are these girls being kicked off for flying first class? The title blazed across my screen. It was the same guy with the camera from earlier. The footage showed us being escorted off the plane quiet, composed, confused. It showed Lacey and Matthew whispering. It showed Ms. Holbrook's tight-lipped questions. And it was already trending. Oh my God. Seren breathed. It's out there. I opened the stream. Hundreds of comments, then thousands. Some supportive, others skeptical. A few toxic. Of course, they always find their way in. But most were asking the same question. Why the internet's faster than justice? Seren muttered. Maybe. But at least now we're not invisible. Then the call came. Dad. I answered immediately. I just got off the phone with Wallace Kane. He said. My breath caught. Seren's eyes widened. Wallace Kane, CEO of Skyreach Airlines, a name we'd only heard in headlines. He's an old colleague, Dad continued. We built infrastructure deals together 20 years ago. I explained what happened. He's disturbed. Seren leaned closer. Is he doing anything? He's launching an internal review. But that's not all. I reminded him that Ardent Link controls fiber optic communications in over a dozen major airports, including Skyreach's preferred hubs. I froze. You didn't. I did. I told him unless a formal apology is issued and disciplinary action is taken, Ardent Link will revoke all priority tech access across our terminals and servers. Seren gasped. That's millions in losses. And I want them to feel every penny, he said, not angry, resolved. Dad, we don't want to punish innocent staff. This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. People in power only act when other powerful people force them to. He paused, then softened. You did everything right, and I will not let anyone punish you for that. I felt something crack inside me, not pain, relief. Seren's hand found mine. Thanks, Dad. I whispered. Stay where you are. He said, I'll call again soon. Then he was gone. We sat in silence. For the first time all day, neither of us knew what to say. Around us, the airport continued its routine ballet, planes taxiing, announcements chiming, travelers fussing over overhead bins. Somewhere, a Starbucks grinder screamed into the morning. But at our gate, everything had changed. Not for the airport, for us. 15 minutes after Dad's second call, the airport around us looked the same. But we weren't in the same place anymore. Not really. The gate still buzzed with the hum of travel. Flight 716 to Crestline had officially departed. The announcement had come over the speaker with the same robotic cheerfulness all airline messages have. Skyreach Airlines regrets to inform passengers that Flight 716 has now departed. For rebooking options, please see the gate desk. But we hadn't missed it. We had been removed from it. Across the terminal, travelers scrolled their phones. Some glanced at us, subtle or not. A few whispered to companions. One older man nodded once in recognition, like he had put something together. Seren was still pacing near the window, her arms crossed tightly, but her shoulders had started to shake. Not from fear, from fury. I was still seated, motionless, my fingers twisted in my lap, cold and clenched. I wasn't sure when I had stopped breathing deeply. Then my phone buzzed again, and again, and again. I opened it to find a swarm of notifications, comments, shares, mentions. The live stream footage, the one posted by the vlogger, had now crossed 500,000 views. Kalea, Seren whispered, staring at her own screen. It's viral. My feed was flooded. Travel blogs, civil rights Twitter, TikTok reposts, comment threads already arguing about the story, like it was a panel on cable news. Some were exactly what we feared. Why were they in first class alone? Maybe the staff was just following policy. This isn't racism, it's protocol. But others were lighting matches. 2 black girls removed from first class for existing. In 2025, they had valid tickets, valid ID, still weren't believed. Watch this. Then ask yourself how many times this has happened off camera. Seren dropped into the seat beside me. She shoved her phone into her hoodie pocket like it had burned her. Why is the internet always faster than justice? I didn't know. But I did know one thing: we weren't invisible anymore. Then came the approach. A man in his 50s, regulation haircut, suit that looked ironed onto his frame, badge clipped to his lapel. Darren Pike, airport duty manager. He didn't smile, didn't even pretend. Kalea and Seren Ward. Yes, I said, standing. Seren moved beside me. I've been briefed on your situation. He began. First, let me say this isn't personal. There are protocols we follow. Protocols like what Seren asked, arms still folded. You've already seen our documents. Yes. Well, he said, hands folding behind his back. The flight crew expressed concern. Concern? I echoed. About what? Exactly. He looked past us just for a moment, then back, like he was weighing how honest to be. They felt uncomfortable with the situation. Serene's head snapped up. You mean we made them uncomfortable? He lifted a hand, trying to diffuse. It's not an accusation. There's uncertainty when minors occupy first class without direct guardian contact, especially when the booking wasn't verified at the counter in person. Our father booked the tickets. I said, he's a verified Skyreach member. The names match our passports. Everything is clean. I'm sure that's true, he said blandly. But you're still denying us boarding? Seren snapped. We're offering you seats in the main cabin, or a later flight, first class, but only with adult supervision. The words hit harder than they should have. Supervision? You're moving us, I said, because we're unsupervised. Not because we did anything wrong, just because we don't look like who you expect in row 1. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Say it, Seren said, voice rising. Say if we were 2 white girls named Madison and Chloe, this wouldn't be happening. Darren's jaw clenched. That's not fair. What's not fair, I said quietly, is assuming we don't belong. We followed every rule, and now we're being punished for making someone uncomfortable. He took a breath. Staff comfort is also a factor in ensuring a safe travel experience. That stopped me. Not safety, not procedure. Comfort. You're saying our presence, I said slowly, makes your crew uncomfortable. I didn't say that, but you did. Seren snapped. Around us. More people were listening now. Nearby passengers stood. A couple who had been reading a travel magazine stopped mid-page. Others picked up their phones. And just over Darren's shoulder, I saw the same guy from earlier, the vlogger, still filming, still whispering into his mic. Darren noticed too. His lips tightened. This conversation is over, he said sharply. The flight has departed. We'll find a suitable alternative. We'll call our father. I said. You're welcome to, Darren said, already turning away. Skyreach policy allows gate agents to deny boarding at their discretion. Then he walked off, like we were trash on a runway. We sat down again, slower this time. I felt tears threaten, but I swallowed them. Not here. Not now. Seren sat beside me, silent. No sarcasm, no spark, just tired. Then a voice soft, kind, unmistakably black. I saw what happened. Baby. A woman in her 50s, well-dressed, calm. She stood with her husband a few feet away. Her eyes glistened. That wasn't right. Seren nodded faintly. Thank you. I have daughters. If anyone treated them like that. She shook her head. Don't let them make you question who you are. You belong here. You always did. She walked away. Her husband gave us a quiet nod of solidarity before following. Seren turned to me. Call him again. I did. The second call didn't last long. It didn't need to. Dad picked up on the first vibration. Where are you now? Still at the gate, I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Seren leaned in again, her body tense beside mine. Good, he said. Stay there. I've just spoken again with Wallace Kane. He's holding a PR briefing in under an hour. He's personally involved now. We stared at each other. Seren's eyes widened. He's agreed to suspend the crew involved. There's also going to be a full internal audit of recent discrimination claims. This isn't performative. Kalea, this is structural. I was still processing when he continued, But I'm not stopping there. What do you mean? I asked. His voice dropped half a register, not angry, but focused, cold, clear. I've made it very clear until formal apologies are issued and new oversight procedures are adopted. Ardent Link's partnerships with Skyreach are frozen. All of them, all of them. Tech access, in-flight comms, terminal server prioritization. They will lose millions a week. Seren's mouth fell open. Dad. No, he interrupted gently. They need to feel this, because the next girls might not have a father with leverage, and they still deserve dignity. A long silence passed, not empty, full. You didn't do anything wrong, he added, voice softer now. You followed every rule. I won't let anyone make you feel like your presence is a problem. Something cracked in my chest again, not in pain and relief. Thank you, I whispered. I'll have more updates soon. Sit tight. He hung up. We stared out over the terminal. The same travelers moved around us. Same luggage wheels. Same coffee cups. Same security announcements pinging through the overhead speakers. But we were no longer just passengers. We were a story, and it was growing. Seren pulled out her phone again. Kalea, she whispered. It's everywhere. I leaned in. Our names, our faces, our quiet walk off the plane. The look in our eyes as we were escorted out of first class, it had all been posted and reposted across 100 different accounts. A new headline had just gone live. Teen sisters removed from first class for making staff uncomfortable. CEO father responds swiftly. Travel Tribune, Slatewire, even Buzzworld. They were all covering it. Even the old footage of us from school events, science fairs, scholarship ceremonies was resurfacing. People were searching for context, for proof that we were good enough. Seren looked down, shaking her head. I didn't ask for this. I know. We were just trying to get to a conference. I know. I said, but we can't stop it now. Well, we had stopped being just two girls at Gate C-22. We'd become a symbol. Some tweets were kind. The Ward sisters did nothing wrong. This is discrimination. Full stop. Their father's response. That's the kind of protection every kid deserves. Others, not so much. Must be nice to have a billionaire dad fix your problems. Why were they even in first class alone? This isn't about race. It's about following procedure. I felt nauseous, like the ground was shifting again, but this time, we couldn't predict where it would land. Seren nudged me. That guy with the camera. He's coming over. I looked up. It was the same vlogger. Mid-20s. Plain gray cap. Nervous smile. He approached us slowly, his voice soft. Hey, I don't want to intrude, but if you'd like to say anything, I'm still live. Seren opened her mouth, but I raised a hand gently. Not right now. I said, understood. He hesitated, looking down at his mic, then back at us. What they did, it didn't feel right. So I hit record. Thank you, I said quietly. He nodded once and stepped back, just far enough to give us room. Across the terminal, employees were whispering behind podiums. Phones were out. Heads were ducking. A woman in a blazer had one hand over her mouth and the other over her phone. Was she on a call with corporate? Was she watching us trend? I didn't know. But my phone buzzed again. Dad, I just got confirmation, he said, of what Skyreach is holding an emergency press briefing in 30 minutes. Wallace Kane is going to speak publicly. Seren and I exchanged looks. He's agreed to suspend the flight crew, Dad continued. They're launching an internal audit, and they've agreed to bring in third-party oversight. Are you serious? Seren asked, stunned. Dead serious, Dad said. And I'm not stopping there. I told them the issue isn't PR, it's power. If they don't take real steps, we'll pull every contract that touches them. You're really doing it. They messed with my daughters, he said. Now they're going to learn what accountability looks like. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then, with a gentler tone, he added, I know this is a lot. I didn't want your trip to go this way. We know, I said. We didn't want it either. Seren was quiet. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. Maybe it was supposed to go this way. I turned toward her, surprised. She met my gaze, and in that moment, something in both of us settled. This wasn't just about our seats anymore. This was about everyone who ever got pulled aside, second-guessed, stared at, quietly erased. I'm proud of you, Dad said. Both of you. We'll wait here. I said, Good. I'll have more updates soon. He hung up. We didn't move for a long time. Not because we didn't want to, but because we weren't sure where to go. Our seats were gone. Our flight had left. But our voices, they were just getting started. It started with a man in a perfect suit. Navy, crisp, tailored like it knew it didn't belong in economy. He walked toward us with a clipboard tucked under his arm and a corporate grin stretched too wide across his face, the kind of smile that had been rehearsed in mirrors and PR workshops. Kalea and Seren Ward, he said, more statement than question. I'm Julian Cole, station manager here at Summit Bay International for Skyreach. We said nothing. He took that as permission to continue. First, I want to sincerely apologize for the inconvenience you've experienced today. Seren raised an eyebrow. Inconvenience. Yes, of course, he nodded. It was never our intention to make you feel unwelcome. Then why were we removed from our seats, I asked. Keeping my voice even. Julian's smile faltered, just for a second. There was a miscommunication, he replied smoothly. We're currently investigating the situation internally. He held out 2 envelope-style tickets. We'd like to offer you seats on our next flight to Seattle again in first class, along with full access to our premium lounge and meal vouchers. Seren didn't reach for them. You think a croissant and a recliner fix this? Julian blinked. Of course not, but we want to make it right. I leaned forward, voice cool but not loud. No, you want to make it go away. He didn't deny it, didn't have to. Just stood there holding out 2 shiny apologies in envelope form. 2 tokens meant to erase an entire humiliation. I took them, not because I accepted the offer, but because I needed to feel how light they were. We'll think about it, I said. Julian gave a tight nod and backed away, already muttering into his headset as he walked. Serene stared after him, her mouth pressed into a tight line. They still don't get it, she said. They think this is a PR inconvenience, like it can be patched over with a smoothie bar and warm towels. This isn't about orange juice and Wi-Fi. I agreed. It's about the people who looked us in the face and decided we didn't belong. And now they're scrambling because we have a father who can fight back. Exactly, I said. But what about the ones who don't? We made our way to the Skyreach Premium Lounge. Not because we wanted to accept anything, but because we needed a place to sit that didn't smell like overcooked pretzels and injustice. The lounge was sleek, polished marble counters, glass walls. Business travelers in loafers and leggings tapped away on laptops. A woman in stilettos sipped a mimosa and gave us a long, unreadable look as we passed. We took a quiet booth near the back, away from the spin cycle. A moment passed in silence. Then we heard it. A voice too loud, too careless. Familiar. They're just kids. Caused a media storm over nothing. We turned. There he was, Darren Pike, the same duty manager who told us we made the crew uncomfortable. He stood by the espresso bar, speaking to a younger employee who looked increasingly nervous. If they weren't who they were, Darren said, nobody would care. We'd be flying by now. Seren stood up before I could stop her. Walked straight to him. Say that again, she said, calm, but burning. Darren spun around. Caught. Excuse me. Say what you just said. About us. Say it where we can hear it. The lounge went still. Other travelers looked up. A few froze mid-sip. Darren raised both palms. I don't think this is the place you said we caused a storm over nothing, Seren said, voice louder now. That we're just kids. That none of this would matter if we didn't have someone powerful behind us. I stood beside her. You said the quiet part out loud. Darren, we were a problem to you before anyone hit record. He looked around, praying for a way out. Look, I'm under pressure. This whole thing's been overblown. No, I said sharply. It's not overblown. It's overdue. His coworker tugged his sleeve. Let's go. They disappeared through a side door, red-faced and rattled. We sat down again, not because we were tired, but because confrontation is its own kind of exhaustion, especially when it wears a lanyard and khakis. Seren leaned her head back against the plush booth. Do you think they're sorry I looked out through the glass wall toward the tarmac? Planes taxied under soft afternoon light, oblivious to our rebellion. No, I said. I think they're scared. A lounge staffer brought us ginger tea and fruit plates. We hadn't asked, but I think they just didn't know what to do with two teenage girls who might either cry or spark a federal inquiry. Seren pushed the fruit aside. I'm not hungry. Me neither, I said. Not for anything they're offering. Then her phone buzzed again. She frowned, tilted the screen toward me. A new post. From a woman named Rachel Fenwick. I was seated 2 rows behind the young girls who were removed from Skyreach Flight 716. They were polite, calm, respectful. Nothing about them warranted removal. If anything, the flight attendant was visibly agitated from the moment they sat down. I watched it happen. It was wrong. We blinked. Then more comments flooded in. I was in seat 3D, can confirm they did nothing wrong. Crew kept whispering and pointing. The girls were professional, more than I can say for the staff. Seren's hands trembled. People are backing us up. They're not just backing us up, I said. They're proving we weren't imagining it. Another video surfaced. Grainy. Sideways. But you could see it, Lacey and Matthew whispering. Watching. Then walking toward us. Then us. Gathering our things. Leaving. The caption read first-class passengers removed for being young, black, and alone. By the time we finished reading Rachel Fenwick's post, our phones had turned into spotlights. Comments flooded in. New witnesses. Fellow passengers. People who'd said nothing earlier now began stepping forward like the story had cracked something open inside them too. One message stood out. A quiet DM from someone who had filmed the walk-off from a few rows back. I didn't know if I should say anything, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I've uploaded the footage in case it helps. We tapped the link, grainy video, angled from behind a headrest. But there we were, us. Lacey whispering to Matthew, both glancing our way, then walking up the aisle, slow and deliberate, our quiet voices asking questions, not causing trouble, the overhead bins, the walk of shame back down the jet bridge. Caption: first-class passengers removed for being young, black, and alone. My stomach tightened. It was haunting, not because it was new, but because we'd lived it, and still needed proof to be believed. Beside me, Seren gripped her phone with white knuckles. "Look," she whispered. I leaned over. Channel Wave News had picked it up. So had Airfare Accountability, The Route, and Teen Watch. And now, Ellen Harper had posted. A civil rights attorney with a reputation for dismantling corporate discrimination, she didn't mince words. This is exactly how bias operates in 2025. No shouting, no slurs, no broken rules. Just a quiet series of concerns and procedures that push black girls out of first class. It's racism in a pressed uniform. Seren read it twice, then sat back, stunned. "This isn't just going viral anymore," she said. "It's catching fire." Then came the woman, mid-30s, sleek dress, no phone in her hand, no camera, just honesty. She stepped toward us like she'd been holding something in for too long. "Excuse me," she said, voice clear. "You don't know me, but I was on your flight." We sat up straighter. "I didn't say anything earlier. I regret that, but I wanted you to know I saw what happened. I filed a report with customer relations." Seren blinked. "You were there." She nodded. "I've flown for years. I've never seen passengers treated like that, especially not in first class. It felt targeted." "I'm sorry." "Thank you," I said. "That means more than you know." Another voice cut in from nearby, a man in a navy blazer, flipping through a newspaper. "I was on that flight too. You were both calm and professional, more than I can say for the crew." Then another voice, younger, behind us. "I saw it on TikTok. You handled it better than most adults I know." And just like that, it began. A ripple. People started speaking. People who had stayed silent. People who had been unsure. People who had hesitated because they didn't want to make things worse. They found their voice now. Seren sat down slowly again. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear, from fury. "They tried to erase us," she whispered, "and now the whole world's watching. They wanted silence." I murmured, "They're getting echoes." A lounge staffer approached again. She handed us 2 printed documents. "The airline just released these," she said. "Official statement." We took them. The letterhead read Skyreach Airlines Public Response to Passenger Incident. It was full of soft language, polished vagueness. "We regret any discomfort caused. Skyreach is committed to inclusivity. We continue to investigate. No names, no ownership, no apology." Seren dropped hers onto the table like it was toxic. "So that's it. A PR massage." "They're protecting themselves," I said, eyes still on the page. "Not us." Seren looked at me, her voice sharpened. "Then maybe it's time we protect ourselves." And I knew what she meant. This wasn't ours anymore. This story belonged to everyone watching. Everyone who had ever been pushed aside, ignored, stared at, dismissed, and they were speaking finally. Our phones started buzzing again. This time, it wasn't just TikTokers or anonymous threads. It was journalists. A reporter from a regional travel blog, then one from National Watch, then CNN, then The Route, Teen Vision, even producers from late-night shows. "We'd love to speak with you about your experience. Would you be open to a recorded interview? We believe your story needs to be heard." We stared at the screen. Over 40 requests. Seren looked pale. "We're not celebrities," she whispered. Why do they all care now? I answered without thinking. Because we hit a nerve. This isn't just about us being kicked off a plane. It's about everything underneath it. Bias, gatekeeping, image, control. The invisible fences no one ever films until now. A man in a gray blazer approached, media badge clipped to his lapel. Kalea. Serene, he asked, then backed off politely. Sorry, I know this is overwhelming. I'm Miles Garrett, from Waypoint Daily. If you're not ready, I completely understand. But when you are, we'd love to give you space to speak. Unedited? Seren didn't answer. I offered a quiet thank you. He nodded, then stepped back, respecting the silence. Seren turned to me. What do we do? I didn't answer at first, because I didn't know. If we spoke, we'd risk being misquoted, misunderstood, reduced to hashtags or headlines. If we stayed silent, the story would spin without us. We talked to Dad, I said finally, and we did. Outside the lounge, we stepped into the terminal hallway and called him. He answered on the first ring. You okay, kind of? I said, but the press, it's coming for us. Seren jumped in. Should we talk to them? What if they twist it? A long pause, then his calm voice, the same tone he used when making billion-dollar decisions. You don't owe anyone your pain. But if you choose to speak, make sure it's your terms, not theirs. We nodded, even though he couldn't see us. And if we don't, then they'll keep guessing. And the narrative moves without you. It hit like a truth we hadn't named yet. He was right. We hung up and walked back to the lounge window. Outside, a Skyreach plane was pulling into the gate. People rolled bags and smiled. Another boarding zone lined up, another flight about to take off. All of it felt so normal, and so far from what we'd just lived. Do you think we can really change anything? Seren asked. I thought of Lacey's eyes, of Matthew's stiff smile, of Darren's contempt. I think we already have. She looked at me, then nodded. Maybe we should finish what we started. We didn't call CNN. Not yet. We called Amara Sloan, our old school's former speech coach, now working in public advocacy. She answered on the second ring. I saw the footage, she said before we even introduced ourselves. I was hoping you'd call. We asked her to help us prepare. Not for spin, not for PR, for something real. People will want you angry, she warned, but anger isn't the only way to tell the truth. Speak like you already know the world is listening, because now it is. We stayed in the lounge another hour, not because we had to, but because this was the real terminal. The space between silence and choice. The space between what happened to us and what we did next. The email came in at 7:43 p.m. Subject line request for Statement Public Accountability Project. The organization was real, verified, known for tracking corporate misconduct and giving voice to those caught in the margins. We're compiling written accounts from passengers who witnessed or experienced the Skyreach incident. Would either of you be willing to provide one? Seren read the message aloud, then looked at me. Written. That's something. I nodded slowly. We control the words. We make it count. So we began. Not a social media post, not a tweet, a full statement, every detail, every pause, every question we asked that no one answered. We didn't write it to be dramatic. We wrote it to be undeniable. By the next morning, the ripple had become a wave. The top trending hashtag was the car seat for everyone. News anchors were quoting us. Legal experts were analyzing footage frame by frame. Travel forums were exploding with personal stories. A teacher posted, "My black son is 12 and already afraid of flying alone." This story gutted me. A disabled passenger added, "It's not just race. It's how comfort is defined and who gets to be seen as safe." And a young woman from Georgia tweeted, "I've been randomly selected 12 times in 8 flights." Kalea and Seren's story is mine too. Seren's fingers hovered over her phone as she read. "They're not just sharing this, they're living it." "Exactly," I said. "That's why we can't let the narrative drift." Later that day, Skyreach released its first formal apology. This one wasn't just a press release, it was a press conference. We streamed it from the lounge TV. The CEO, Wallace Kane, stood behind a polished podium, flanked by executives in careful suits. His face was taut, eyes tired. He began without preamble. "Good morning. I want to begin by formally apologizing to Kalea and Seren Ward." Seren held her breath. What happened to them was unacceptable. Oh, Skyreach does not condone discrimination of any kind. Effective immediately. The crew members involved have been placed on unpaid leave pending a full review. The duty manager on site is no longer employed with the company. We blinked. He wasn't done. We will be updating our internal policies regarding unaccompanied minors in premium cabins. All flight crew will undergo new bias training developed in partnership with civil rights organizations. We have also invited third-party oversight to monitor our compliance and provide public equity audits. He closed his folder, paused. We thank the Ward family for holding us accountable. The stream ended. For a moment, Seren and I just sat there, frozen. Then she whispered, "They fired Darren. He deserved it," I said, my voice oddly flat. She shook her head, chewing her lip. "Yeah, but I still feel weird about it." "Me too. Because victory, real victory, doesn't always feel clean. Sometimes it's jagged and complicated. Sometimes it arrives on a podium. Too late." That afternoon, our conference organizers, who'd been watching all of this unfold, arranged a private car to take us to the final day of programming. But before we could step inside, a woman in a bright blue blazer stepped forward, badge around her neck, microphone in hand. "Kalea." "Seren, do you have a statement about Skyreach's announcement?" Seren looked at me. I didn't hesitate. "Yes." The camera rolled. "We appreciate the public apology," I said calmly. "But an apology doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't undo the humiliation. It doesn't take back the fact that our skin color was quietly weaponized against us. We didn't ask for special treatment. We asked to be treated fairly." Seren stepped up beside me, her voice firm, clear. "We want accountability, not revenge. We hope this forces airlines, not just Skyreach, to re-examine how implicit bias is baked into their procedures." Flash. Upload. Viral. That night, back at the hotel, Dad called. "I saw your interview," he said. His voice was tight but not angry. Not worried. Just full. "Too much, I asked." "Just right. You weren't angry. You were clear. I'm proud of you both." Seren exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. "It still feels surreal." "I know," he said. "But you made them listen. That's rare and powerful." And then he said something else. Something I didn't expect. "But don't forget to be 16. We laughed for the first time in days. It didn't last long. But it was real. 2 days later, we flew home on Skyreach Airlines. The irony wasn't lost on us. We boarded quietly. The crew was new, polished, friendly. Almost too friendly, like they'd all been handed a checklist called "How Not to Mess This Up Again." A flight attendant greeted us. "Welcome aboard, Miss Ward. We're honored to have you. Please let us know if you need anything." Seren nodded, polite but unreadable. We took our seats in 1A and 1B again. Same tray tables, same overhead lights. But it didn't feel the same. Halfway through the flight, Seren leaned toward me. "Do you think this is real change, or just damage control I didn't answer right away?" Outside the window, clouds drifted like floating cities. Soft, silent, deceptively peaceful. "Both," I said finally. "It started as damage control, but it might become real if people keep watching." She leaned back. "I don't want us to become a story people use to feel better about themselves. You know, like, look, something changed, and then nothing really does." "Me neither," I said. We fell silent again. Across the aisle, an older white woman in a navy cardigan glanced at us for a second too long, then gave a tight, awkward smile and turned away. Serene caught it. "Everyone looks at us like we're a headline." "They don't see us," I said. "They see what happened to us." That was the problem. We were no longer just students, or sisters, or daughters. We were a symbol, and symbols get shared, but rarely understood. Back home, everything looked the same, but we weren't. The flight landed softly, like nothing had happened. We wheeled our carry-ons through arrivals like any other passengers. No cameras, no press, just two teenagers with backpacks and a memory the size of a storm. At baggage claim. Seren stared at the carousel in silence. I thought coming home would feel like, I don't know, closing a door. "Me too," I said. "But this still feels wide open." We returned to school the next day. And if we'd hoped for normal, we didn't get it. A girl from chemistry class stopped us by our lockers. "You are so brave." One of the AP English teachers pulled us aside. "Would you speak at our next assembly?" Something short, just to inspire. The local church youth group sent matching bracelets, black cords, silver lettering. "Your voice matters." Seren wore hers for 2 hours, then took it off. "They're being sweet," she admitted. "But I don't want this to become a souvenir." I understood. Because when a moment goes viral, people don't always remember what it cost. Dad didn't say much either, but he didn't have to. He kept busy meeting with Sky Reach board advisors, pushing federal oversight conversations, consulting with civil rights groups behind the scenes. He never gave another public statement. But sometimes I'd catch him standing at the kitchen window, coffee in hand, phone face down on the counter, still, watching. "Do you regret going this far?" I asked him once. He took a breath long and slow. "No," he said, "but I regret that we had to." That answer stayed with me, because here's the truth. No matter how many apologies Skyreach released, no matter how many staff they retrained, it didn't erase what we now carried. Not fear, not even anger, just clarity. We lived in a world where being young and black and visible was still a risk. Where being confident meant being twice as careful not to make anyone uncomfortable. Where sitting in row 1 could be seen as a threat to comfort. And if our father hadn't been Julian Ward, a tech CEO with leverage over national infrastructure, we would have been dismissed, not defended. That truth burned more than any insult. One night, a journalist from a major magazine emailed with a single question. "Do you believe what happened will create long-term change, or will this be just another moment in the news cycle?" We stared at the screen for a long time. Seren typed first, paused, backspaced, typed again. I added a sentence, then another, together. We sent back the only answer that felt honest. We hope it's both. A moment loud enough to be remembered, and a beginning quiet enough to inspire something better. Spring came early that year. The snow in upstate New York melted fast, revealing muddy sidewalks and soft green shoots. Birds returned. The wind calmed. Life, moved forward. So did we. But something inside us had changed. Not broken, not bitter, just sharper. We didn't walk through the world as passers-by anymore. We noticed more. The slow glances, the loaded silences, the small kindnesses that came with too much apology, and the microaggressions that came with none. We were teenagers, but we'd been aged by all this. Not by the cruelty, but by the responsibility it left behind. In the cafeteria, someone whispered the word famous as we passed. A boy from gym posted a meme using our photos. First-class problems. We didn't respond. Not because it didn't sting, but because fighting every ripple would have drowned us. Dad kept pushing, too. He worked quietly but forcefully, alongside legal advisors and policymakers, drafting something new, the Passenger Fair Access Act. A federal bill designed to track patterns of discrimination in airline service. It was bigger than us, bigger than Skyreach. It was about structure. It was about what happens when the rules are neutral. But the enforcement isn't. A month later, we were invited to speak at a racial equity panel hosted by a local university. Seren hesitated. I don't want to keep reliving it. You don't have to. I told her. Just speak the truth. Let the room decide what it means. She nodded. We went. The panel was quiet at first. Polite. Attentive. We told the story, not the viral version, but the human one. The uncertainty. The way our boarding passes suddenly stopped being enough. The walk down the jet bridge with everyone watching. The silence that hit harder than anything spoken. And after the clapping stopped, came the questions. A student in a hoodie raised his hand. How did you stay composed when it was happening? Seren gave a half smile. We didn't always. We just stayed human. Another asked, what would you say to people who think this was just about money or fame? I answered without blinking that if they'd gone through it with no one listening, they'd know exactly why we had to make noise. Then came the question I didn't expect. A girl in the second row, voice soft, almost afraid to ask. Did it feel worth it? Seren looked at me. I looked at her. Then I said what we'd never said aloud. It wasn't about whether it felt worth it. It was about making sure the next girls didn't have to decide if they were. A hush fell over the room, and in that stillness, we weren't symbols anymore. We were something else. A beginning. After the panel, a woman approached us with a little girl. The girl looked no older than 12. Small braids, denim jacket, wide, thoughtful eyes. The mother knelt beside her, smiled gently, and said, These are the ones I told you about. The girls who stood up for what was right. The little girl looked at us. Then she smiled too. I want to be like them. And right there in that quiet moment something shifted. Not fame, not victory, legacy, not the kind written into headlines or posted in hashtags, but the kind passed from one heart to another. A seed planted, a future imagined. Later that week, Skyreach released its first Equity and Access report. We didn't read it right away. When we finally did, we were surprised. The numbers weren't just fluff. There was real substance behind the data. The report showed increased hiring of flight crew from underrepresented groups, revised bias training in collaboration with civil rights watchdogs, independent audits of boarding denial patterns across 6 airports, a drop in passenger complaints involving race, age, and profiling. Small steps, imperfect steps, but steps. And our names? Not in it, not once, which was perfect. Because this was never about credit. It was about momentum. Somewhere in Arizona, Georgia, or the back row of 28C, We hoped another pair of girls could just sit down in their seats and fly, without whispers, without concerns, without needing to explain who their father was or why they belonged. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if the passenger with the camera hadn't filmed us, if Rachel Fenwick had looked away, if Miles Garrett hadn't asked gently, if Amara Sloan hadn't picked up the phone, if we had just taken the rebooked flight in silence. Maybe it would have ended there, folded into the pile of untold stories, the almost headlines, the quiet erasures. But that's the thing about silence. It grows. Unless someone breaks it. Dad didn't let up either. He worked with federal transportation leaders and advocacy coalitions to turn his initial pressure into policy. The Passenger Fair Access Act was introduced to Congress within 6 weeks. It wasn't flashy. It didn't trend. But it mattered. It focused on 3 things: data transparency in airline removals and seat reassignments, bias training certification for flight staff, a permanent review panel led by civil rights experts and former passengers. We weren't invited to the hearing. We didn't need to be. We'd already testified in the only way that mattered. One night, over dinner, Dad looked at us, really looked, then said softly, "You two turned a spotlight into a signal flare. You showed the world how deep the fault lines still run. Seren just stirred her rice. We didn't do it alone. No one ever does," he said. "But someone always has to go first. We didn't become activists. We didn't start a movement." But the emails never stopped. From teens, from teachers, from parents who'd stayed quiet too long, from strangers who said, "Your story helped me explain mine." That was what stayed with us the most. The echoes. Sometimes we spoke, sometimes we didn't. Sometimes we just read the messages and whispered thank yous no one could hear. Because grief and clarity come in waves, and healing doesn't always announce itself. It just grows. At school, we still got weird looks sometimes, still heard whispers, but we also got nods, sincere ones, and questions. Did it change anything? Would you do it again? Was it worth it? We answered all 3 the same way. We didn't do it to change everything. We did it so the next time, someone wouldn't have to. A few months later, Amara Sloan invited us to co-author a guide for teens navigating injustice. It wasn't a manual. It was more like a letter. To whoever came next. To the ones walking into boardrooms, or check-in counters, or classrooms where they'd be asked to prove they belonged. The guide began with a simple line. Sometimes the world needs reminding that your seat was never a gift. It was yours all along. We titled it Clear Skies, Firm Ground, and we meant every word, because this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about dignity, about refusing to shrink just because someone else can't expand, about refusing to leave the seat they told you to vacate, and sitting tall in it anyway. By summer, the world had mostly moved on. The headlines had shifted. The algorithms found new outrage. But we hadn't moved on, not really. Because for us, it was never about the headline. It was about what stayed behind after the spotlight turned off. In the quiet that followed, we got used to being ordinary again. Back to our routines, back to schoolwork, late-night ramen, and finishing college essays. And yet, everywhere we went, from classrooms to checkout counters, we walked a little differently, straighter, wiser, sharper. Not because we were famous, but because we were no longer naive. Once, on a rainy day, I overheard 2 girls in the library whispering about us. They're the ones from that plane story. They got someone fired. Right. Their tone wasn't cruel, just curious. Still, I remember thinking, we didn't get anyone fired. We just refused to disappear. There's a difference. Dad stayed busy. His Passenger Fare Access Act eventually reached the Senate floor. It didn't pass right away, no one expected it to, but it sparked real debate. Airline lobbyists called it unnecessary. Advocates called it overdue. Passengers, they called it a beginning. That was enough. One afternoon, Seren and I got an invitation in the mail. It was simple. White envelope, no logo, no dramatic headline. Just a note from a woman named Tanya Rhodes, a former flight attendant. Your story made me confront things I'd been ignoring for years. I left my job last month. I'm now helping train new cabin staff on implicit bias. Thank you for not letting them look away. I read it 3 times, then once more in silence. Seren folded the letter and tucked it into her journal. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. It wasn't long before we started hearing from more people like Tanya, a pilot, a gate agent, a former airport manager. Some thanked us, some apologized, some just wanted us to know. It wasn't right. We saw it too. And even though they didn't speak up then, they were speaking now. That meant something. Weeks later, we got another message. This one from Mrs. Clara Jenkins, our old middle school principal. She was known for being tough, the kind of woman who never let anyone get away with lazy excuses. She'd always been proud of our grades, our speeches, our quiet discipline. Her email said I used to tell my students that courage means standing up for others. But after what you did, I realized I'd forgotten something, that courage also means standing up for yourself, even when the world tells you to sit down. I read that sentence over and over, let it settle in my bones, because in that moment, I felt something return, not vindication, not even pride, but peace. The kind of peace that comes not when things are perfect, but when you know you didn't stay silent. Our story never became a documentary. We declined the podcast deals, turned down the reality series offer, ignored the influencer agency that offered a 6-figure brand contract. That wasn't who we were. That wasn't what this was. We didn't want to be symbols for someone else's campaign. We just wanted to fly to a leadership conference and come home whole. Still, things changed. SkyReach added language to its app, allowing passengers to anonymously report discrimination in real time. The Equity and Access Report became a quarterly publication. Other airlines quietly updated their training modules, and a few weeks before school ended, Kalea and I were asked to review a new public service video made by the Department of Transportation. We weren't in it, but the story was there. Not in our names, but in the faces they cast, the words they chose, the questions they dared to ask. Seren watched it once, then nodded slowly. This is what we needed, not revenge, not sympathy, just to be seen and believed. I nodded, because visibility isn't justice, but it's where justice begins. That night, I wrote something in my journal. It wasn't long, just 2 lines. They told us we made them uncomfortable. We made them honest. Months passed, then seasons. By fall, life felt more normal again. We went to the movies, got rejected from one dream college, got into another, ate way too much takeout, fell back into laughter. But that story never left us. It became part of how we walked, part of how we spoke, part of what we stood for. Not because we wanted to carry it forever, but because we could, and someone needed to. One last thing. Just before graduation, we got one more letter, typed, formal, on SkyReach Airlines letterhead. It was short, but not hollow, not this time. To Kalea and Seren Ward, we owe you more than an apology. We owe you a reckoning we would not have reached without your voice, your presence, and your grace under pressure. The seat you were asked to leave, It was never a privilege. It was always yours. I folded the letter slowly, looked out the window. The sun was setting over the trees, the sky a bruised violet. Seren sat beside me, head resting on her arm. Quiet, calm, tired, but proud. Do you think anyone else will remember what happened? I shrugged. Maybe. But even if they don't, we will. And maybe that's enough. She smiled. The world didn't need us to be perfect, just present, persistent, unwilling to vanish. And maybe someday, another girl will sit in seat 1A. She'll be young, brown-skinned, wearing a backpack, and no one will look twice. No one will ask for her boarding pass twice. No one will check her age, her last name, her right to belong. Because we asked the world to do better. And somewhere, it listened. Not because we shouted, but because we stayed seated. They were just two girls trying to take their seats. They had the right tickets, the right documents, the right to be there. But somehow, it still wasn't enough. Kalea and Seren Ward didn't shout. They didn't seek revenge. They chose truth. In a world that often punishes black youth for daring to take up space, these girls didn't flinch. They stayed seated. They stayed seen. Their quiet courage became a roar. And in doing so, they didn't just demand change for themselves. They opened a path for every person who's ever been told, "You don't belong here." This story isn't about being famous. It's about being heard. It's about holding a mirror up to a system and refusing to look away. If this made you angry, if it made you think, if it reminded you of someone you love, then don't let it end here. Like, share, subscribe, because someone out there is still being quietly silenced, and they need all of us to speak. We'll see you in the next story, one that matters just as much.